So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name's Sophie Shornikoff. I'm a specialist in business applications with Ingram Micro. I'll just show my face, that might be helpful. There I am. Hi and welcome again. So today's webinar over the next 30 minutes will present the latest trends and technology that can help you achieve greater efficiency, productivity and visibility over the end-to-end manufacturing cycle, something I think all of us that have worked in the industry are looking for. Manufacturing, it's a complex industry and it's made up of a lot of moving parts, and that there's no pun intended in that at all. I've worked in the food manufacturing industry myself for over a decade before I moved into the tech industry, so I know firsthand the stresses and the pressures that disruptions can place on you as you try to react, to respond to them and to overcome them. For me, I guess working in the food industry, the big three for me were like disruption to the supply chain, or, delaying supplies, equipment breakdown that you didn't plan for, poor communication, collaboration. They're probably the top three for me. And I know a lot of some of you have already placed in the chat box that, different systems that probably are not talking to each other, maybe not being able to have a cohesive process. So there are a number of factors that can actually cause those disruptions. So without further ado, let me go through and make some introductions. Let me introduce you to your guest speakers. So first cab off the rank will be Tim Shaw. He's the cloud solutions architect. There he is, waving at us. He's the cloud solution architect for Microsoft. He's got many years experience, deep knowledge, especially around the trends within the industries, and also, deep knowledge around the enterprise systems that are appropriate for the manufacturing industry. I've introduced myself before. I'm a solutions development specialist. I work at Ingram Micro. SOCO is one of our specialist partners, and I also run that partner-to-partner program where SOCO helps our other partners solve problems for their customers. Priscilla is going to be talking to you about the methodology that SOCO implements around helping you uncover what you need, the areas where you can automate, be able to map out what's involved in that sort of transforming those processes. So that would be fantastic. She's going to be following after Steve. Steve will be following after Tim. And he's a principal consultant with SOCO, and he's going to cover off some really good stories, customer stories, where they were able to solve some pretty big issues within that manufacturing space. Next slide, please, and over to you, Tim.
Thank you, Sophie. So hi, everyone. I'm Tim Shaw. I'm a cloud solution architect at Microsoft. Like Sophie, I actually worked in wholesale distribution, retail, as well as manufacturing before I got involved in systems implementation later on in life. And over the course of my time working on systems, which has been 25, 26 years, I have implemented in pharmaceutical manufacturing, process, discrete manufacturing, and a number of other areas of business. So fair bit of experience in this area. So I wanted to start from the beginning, and I think there's a lot of what we call KPIs. So these are things that you would expect to potentially get for your business, or things you should look at as value you should get from your business when implementing or upgrading to a manufacturing system. In particular, there's some that I've highlighted on green here, which are normal things that you do get. One is around procurement margin. So by controlling my inventory better, and being able to procure my inventory and have a visibility of who I'm buying off what, I can negotiate prices, including maybe blanket orders over 12 months that get me a better margin and reduce the amount I'm spending on procurement. Profit margin control, so have those standard costs potentially, have the raw materials come, and being able to control how your profit actually is in your business. Increasing production capacity utilization, so having a view of what my capacity is in production, making sure that I am utilizing it. I mean, you could be looking at the theory of constraints there, where you identify your bottleneck and basically you manufacture around your bottleneck or increase the capacity in your bottlenecks. But that's all information that a proper system will give you those insights into. Production efficiency, so getting that reporting back so I can make changes to make sure that my production is working. So I know that when I built this last month, the operational cost involved or the labor cost involved, it was X amount. This month, it's just this amount, and knowing how I can actually optimize that. Increased staff efficiency, time savings goes along the same theme as production efficiency, and optimized days sales outstanding. So there's a number of areas, right? There's everything from taking an order of a customer, potentially building the product or having it as standard stock, all the way to delivering the product, and to actually understand, how I'm actually collecting money from my customers, which is very important. So, I always kind of, when I deal with customers and they talk about extending the solution, you always want to question what the value of doing that to the solution is. If it provides value, such as keeping my staff numbers down from an operational perspective or an overhead perspective, then it's normally fairly easy to justify. If it doesn't actually provide value back to the organization, then why do it? And it's the same with when I'm implementing a system. I need to get something of value out of it from doing it. And that goes for even if you're actually migrating or you're upgrading from a previous version. You want that project to deliver value back to your organization. So when we look at business applications evolution, and I've lived this, where you're actually doing separate transactions. So you've got your customer transaction, you've got your inventory transaction, you've got your vendor transaction, or you're treating every new transaction you do with customers as though it's your first. So you're not building that ongoing relationship. And really these days, we talk a lot, which is down a little bit, do 360-degree view of business. We do talk a lot about 360-degree view of customers and vendors. So really relationship management, which used to be more about customer relationship management, these days is about multiple relationship management and around the 360-degree. So how do I know that this customer brought this product off me the year before? That's normal reporting. But how do I surface that? And then how do I get to the point that I know this product that's failing in the field has the components supplied by this vendor? So how do I get that whole view? So that's when you come into things like static products to the connected intelligent services to be able to actually get the overview of what's actually happening with your product, what the satisfaction rate is. And a good example of this in real life is something like Uber Eats, right? You deliver Uber Eats, you order Uber Eats is on the way to you. You know when it's been picked up. You can pretty well tell if it was delivered directly to you or not. And when it comes, if you've got a problem with the food, you're giving feedback straight away. So having that connected intelligent services, you can really start to automate that. Siloed data, that's something which is the legacy of having a system that doesn't do everything that I need. So therefore I create new databases, Excel spreadsheets, other ways of doing what I need, and creating silos of data that's not secure and also causes double entry. And then we have these monolithic suites. I don't remember the green screen monitors, but you have these suites of applications that try to be everything to everyone. And when they do that, they create their own complexity. So what we're talking about today is interactive, highly tailored experiences for your organization. So when I decide to implement a Dynamics product, there is a level of, for your organization, there may be value in doing something different to everybody else. I've heard the saying that all businesses are the same. Why is the system not the same? My experience, no business is the same, even if they're selling the same product. There's different ways they do their business, and there's different ways they offer value to their customers. So then we have this thing called Microsoft, and under Microsoft, we have this product called Dynamics 365. And Dynamics 365 is a suite of applications to do different roles within an organization. So on the left-hand side, everything from sales, and I'm talking anything from small business sales to enterprise level sales, to marketing, to customer service, to areas like field service where I'm actually repairing equipment I sold, to product visualization, so I can actually see the product that I'm working on, customer insight, so getting that 360-degree view of that customer. If I have multiple ways I'm actually servicing that customer, Virtual agent for customer service. So that's like, you'll see that a lot these days where you go to a website and ask if you want to chat. Often they're virtual agents that start off the conversation and then they transfer you to a real person with that history in the case of what we do. Remote assist, which is really about a good example of it is if I have somebody that needs something to be repaired on an oil rig, it costs a lot of money to put somebody on transportation to get them to the oil rig, and it takes a lot of time to get there. With something like remote assist, you can have somebody on site, you can visually see them and point out what components they need to replace, whilst you're sitting in a nice, comfortable hotel on a beautiful island or sitting back at home in the head office. So remote assist is really around that ability to not only help somebody remotely, but point to pieces and circle bits and pieces they need to replace as though you were there with them. And then you've got customer voice, which is all around the feedback from the customer side, as well as what we call digital contact center as well. Then we jump into connected operations. So in connected operations, we have some standalone apps around products like commerce, fraud protection for commerce. So that's what we use in our Xbox store. Human resources, we have project operations, which is really around not capital projects, customer projects, resource optimization, etc. Guides, which is about how I build something. Intelligent order management, which goes to what Sophie was saying before. There's intelligent order management, and there's another component of that called supply chain insights. And both those products are designed to, whether you're using Business Central or one of our other apps, are designed to fulfill a purpose. So intelligent order management, when I get an order for a customer, it may have to go through a number of steps, and it may actually be supplied by a third-party logistics company, or it might be supplied by the vendor directly, or it might be supplied by a Pacific branch or a Pacific distribution center. That kind of takes the complexity out of that and automatically routes it based off training to the right place. Supply chain insights, which is kind of goes back to what Sophie mentioned at the beginning, is really about that insights where it's listening to social comments as well as comments from freight forwarders to find out if there's a disruption in supply around globally in the world that may affect you. So if I have a part that comes out of, Turkey would be, unfortunately, would be a good example at the moment. So if I had a part that was supplied out of Turkey, then it would actually be able to identify that you might actually have supply chain issues for that particular product at the moment, considering there's been earthquakes there. So that's what supply chain insights. So they're kind of apps that you can adopt, you can use with Business Central. Then we have Business Central, which we'll come back to again shortly. And then underneath this, we have this thing called the Power Platform. So Power BI dashboard reporting is one of those. And we do embed Power BI dashboards into our other applications you see on the screen. And then we have this range of things called Power Automate, Power Apps, and Power Apps. Actually, it should be something else there, but that's virtual bots. So we have this range. Now, what that is about app modernization. So if you've been building apps, the traditional method, they take a long time to develop to get to the point where you can use them properly. Power Apps is more of a low code approach where you're not doing full level of development that you would normally do, which means you can build an app much quicker. And then it gives you the flexibility to change the app quite easily. So sometimes our customers might add functionality into our other apps that I've talked about. Other times they might extend capability just by creating a Power App to do that. And a few examples of Power Apps are potentially an app where a driver delivers something, but they don't just deliver something, they actually go and set the device up and provision the device. So there may be a number of steps they need to tick off to do that. The Power Apps would know about the order from something like Business Central already, so you're not double entering. And then I'm able to do in that app, I'm able to tick boxes, record things, take photos, keep a record without having to extend the actual Business Central app. And Power Automate is workflow, so it's workflow from an approval perspective, but it's also workflow. Maybe when I do this, I need to go and update another app, or I need to go and notify somebody or something else. For Power Automate is a workflow sort of provision. So the Power Platform works across all the apps above and is another way to extend capability in your organization without having to extend the other apps that we're talking about. So today I'm going to focus a little bit on Business Central. Maybe press the button again, Priscilla, and again. So Business Central is designed for what we call the mid-market, so small to medium-sized businesses, and it specifically has a lot of function as standard within the solution, and it's licensed that way, so you're not adding licenses to getting access to more functionality. So it does bring together CRM and ERP functionalities into one base app. So we might go forward, Priscilla. And I'll probably talk about this a couple of times. So the areas you're looking at are finance, of course. So it's a proper finance system. It's a much more extensive finance system than what you see in products like Xero and MYOB. It does operational capabilities. So that's from areas such as supply chain or areas such as manufacturing. Has sales in it. It also has a CRM in it as well. It has service management in it. So you're able to service products. It has a marketing component built into it, and what I would call more job costing, project management. So I'm able to do a job, record details. So sometimes in manufacturing, the manufacturing process is not repetitive. So every time you're doing manufacturing, you're really recording costs to make that product to order. And sometimes people will use job costing to do that versus using what we call the manufacturing module, which is more about bill of materials, routes, or the tasks that I take to build the product, and material requirements planning, as well as production scheduling. So if we go forward a little bit more, Priscilla, around that, which is something important, which I haven't spoken about yet, one of the key pillars of our team that builds the Microsoft Dynamics apps is the data and the intelligence. So for starters, data is required, and we're creating more and more data every day in businesses. But then the next level, which if you've heard of something called ChatGPT, that's kind of a start of this being commercialized or coming to the real world. But the ability to run intelligence over that data to give insights in a timely manner to you to make actions and decisions in your business is super important. So you always have that underlying. And then, as we talked about already, the Power Platforms there. So we keep on going. The 4 pillars specifically that we work when we develop Dynamics 365 Business Central, modern. So it needs to be a modern application, not something that looks archaic and doesn't function as users function. So the reality is all the insight we get from products such as Office and Outlook, etc., goes into how we design interfaces in our ERP side or our CRM side as well. And what's important about that for us is to make sure the user, the person using the system, has everything they need to run the actual process or do the role they're doing in a business. Unified means that you can use the product on a phone, you can use the product on a browser, whether it's Microsoft Edge or whether it's Safari or one of the other browsers, that you can actually do it that way, and you're not limited to having a specific machine to run the application, with built-in security, right? So the whole thing around that you've seen on the news around cyber attacks, etc., we're running this on multi-factor authentication, and we're running it on Azure, and security's there, which I'll talk a little bit more about as we go as well. Intelligence, so we start to bring intelligence in. We kind of do that with a little bit of an example of how you can do sales forecasting in the system. We have an example where you can predict payments. So instead of me saying this customer pays an average of 45 days, we can actually predict that maybe a December invoice won't be paid till the end of January, but normally they pay in 30 days. So it kind of enables you from a sales perspective, if you're going to give a discount to someone or you're going to cut a price to be competitive, that you know when you're going to get paid for that particular price, because that's an important factor. And adaptable. So all of our products are designed to be adaptable, and it's a little bit different to traditional stuff. When I first got involved, I remember working on a system, and every change that we made potentially brought on new issues, but it also took weeks and weeks to be developed. So even just moving a form, a particular field around the form, took over a week to deliver and build because of the complexity of the system underneath. In this case here today, we use what's called extension technology. So our partners and customers extend what we've built already, so they're not kind of embedded inside the system. And that means that you can extend the solution and you can keep what we call evergreen. So you keep on the latest version. So we do releases, we detach what you've built, and then we reattach it and that kind of keeps you up to date. So it's a lot more. It's not always. Sometimes there's complexity and there's a little bit more work to be done, but it's always faster than what it was in traditional ERP systems to extend the solution and then keep the solution up to date. So why do we have a unified business management solution? I think a number of people on the call might have an idea of this already, but business growth is number one. So basically when I implement a system, the system's designed to do something. As my business grows, I will, in Australia, 100% Australia and New Zealand, where I do most of my work, people get agile and they get creative and they find ways to do extra things in the business, which is kind of using Excel, access databases in the old days, or something else. They add apps into the system. The end result is they also start adding staff because there's more and more processes to be done. The process is not efficient, so I keep on adding staff to do it. And I can talk about a customer that I dealt with Priscilla actually many years ago when I was in a different job, that basically spent a lot more money in implementing an ERP system than I would have seen traditional customers of his size do. He had a team in his office of about 3 people, and today he still has 3 people in the office, and him and his wife live in Fiji, and he comes backwards and forward. So he spent a little bit more money to automate processes from day one. So as his business grew, the systems themselves were already built to handle the extra load. Then we get onto this 54% of disconnected systems. So you've got these disconnected systems. Now, the biggest issue with disconnected systems is security. So how do I know that overall the data that I've got on my customers is secure if it's in multiple systems? So if I've got someone taking it out on an Excel spreadsheet, if I've got someone taking it onto their laptop and leaving the organization externally, how do I know that data is secure? And then I've got people putting that data into other systems that may not have the same level of security. So disconnected systems cause issues with processes, system integration issues, but they also create the perfect environment for security and fraud. Reporting limitations. So often because I've got these disconnected systems and I've got these workarounds to help my business grow, I end up with really complex issues to actually do a report because I need to bring multiple sources together to get that data out. And then the other issue is outdated legacy systems. So that's what I would call what we would call a compelling event. But you literally, it's in my case when I was younger, we had what's called an Altos 286 running something called Xenix. That machine broke down. Neither the hardware or the operating system existed at that point. So as a business, how do I get back up and running? How do I get a replacement board that I needed for the computer? And then how do I restore it? In our case, we were lucky. We were able to track down someone that worked on it, and that person just happened to have things to help us do it. So 2 days with no system, 3rd day back up and running. Very lucky. I've heard of other issues where you don't get back up and running. So we might go forward out of that. Sorry, Priscilla. So, to kind of repeat what I said, so siloed systems causing duplication of data, creating manual processes, creating insufficient reporting capabilities, and the big one, security issues. So I work for Microsoft. I can tell you now that any customer's data that at Microsoft is very safe. We go to the 11th degree. Microsoft knows if I copy data off a system onto my laptop or off my system into a USB drive. They know that. That's the way the system's set up. They don't stop me from doing that. They know I do it. And I shouldn't say they know I do it because I don't do it, but they would know if I did it. And if I did do it, there'd be a security breach raised. So we don't even allow people access to that data if they don't have a reason to access that data. So we're very in control of the data and security in our side. Saying that, our systems are built on Azure platform. The Azure platform itself is constantly being attacked by actors, bad actors as we call them, or cyber attacks. So we're constantly monitoring that, and we're constantly making improvements as they come up with new creative ways to try to hack through. And then on top of that, all our business applications are built on top of this, and we do what we call pen testing. So someone tries to hack into the systems yearly. We get redacted audit reports for our customers if they need it. But we go to the level of doing that so that we can make sure the system's secure. In fact, Business Central was pen tested by one of the banks in Australia about 3 years ago to make sure that it wasn't going to cause them any compliance issues. So a lot of focus on security, a lot of focus on keeping the data safe, and a lot of controls and security to keep that data safe. So we go forward, Priscilla, thank you. So when we talk about Business Central, just to give you just an overview once more, so we talked about the different areas of financial management, project management, sales service management, supply chain management, operational management, so all the way down to production control, then report and analytics. So we have all that connected. Then we can connect with third-party applications through what we call secure APIs, things like payroll, things like banking integration, or things like CRM. So if the CRM component or the sales and service management component in Business Central is not what you need as a business, if you need the more external sales side, then we have Dynamics 365 Sales, and we can connect to that app and share the data in a way that's secure, but also stop you from having to do processes in two systems at the same time. And then on top of that, we have the capability to extend the application. So we have the ability for our partners to extend the app to your specific needs. And we do have our partners creating industry-specific extensions to the solution. And a good example of that would be pharmaceutical manufacturing. There's a partner that's created a life sciences app for that. There's a number of apps, and I'll come back to those shortly as well. So that it's connected or it's embedded. So connected means it's connected by APIs as though a user was entering it and with the same level of security as a user was entering it, but two systems talking to each other. Go to the next level, please, Priscilla. So there's a lot of core capabilities in the system. The actual product that we're talking about, Business Central, is about 4.5, 5 years old as what we call a SaaS service, so software as a service. That means Microsoft sets up all the infrastructure, the hardware, the SQL servers and everything like that, and puts the application on it, and then you come and configure it. So software as a service. But it's been out like that for about 4 or 5 years now, but it is built on the top of a product called Navision that was around for 25 years plus for that. It's a different technical capability to what Navision was these days, different architecture underneath, but the processes that we use are those processes that were in Navision, but enhanced because Microsoft does a lot more in that area these days. But specifically in the areas we're talking about today that matter for manufacturers, you've got things like inventory and purchase control, the ability to set limits, do workflow, ability to set minimum and maximums, whether it's make to order, make to stock, costings, etc., all built into the system. The ability to do shipment and distribution, so create shipments to send overseas or create shipments to send to one specific customer of multiple orders. Returns and cancellation side of areas, so that means if something goes wrong, I can release an RMA or returns authorization. I can do that, and then I can actually handle the whole process in the system of sending it back to a vendor, resupply to the customer, and have that record that actually happened. Procurement and vendor management, so the whole area around vendors. I can have my vendors in my system, I can approve them, etc. And then in manufacturing, we have the ability to put a forecast in the system and do our production planning based off those forecasts. We can see our manufacturing capacity. We can set that as infinite or finite. And then we have our warehouse management to the stage that we can transfer stock out of our warehouse into manufacturing and then consume it as part of the process, or we can even consume it as soon as we take it out of the actual warehouse, depending on how you want to run things. But quite strong, specifically around discrete manufacturing. And then we have extensions available to do other areas such as food processing and meat processing, so some of the more complex sort of manufacturing areas. Okay. So there's a couple of specific areas that I'll just finish on. One is connecting your business. So I'll go a little bit into that, how you can make smarter decisions and how you can start and grow easy. So do you want to go forward, Priscilla? So Unified, these are going to go through very quickly, so I'll talk about them in a second. So Unified, for starters, something I haven't mentioned, which was the first screen that went very past very quickly, is that the actual product has got an extension in Outlook. And that means I can take things like a sales quote. A customer sends me an email. In Outlook, I can actually do the sales quote for the customer as though I was in Business Central, but without leaving Outlook. And I can actually send it directly back to the customer without having to leave Outlook. I can also, if a customer sends me an email asking me about a specific invoice, I can actually click with the AI that's in the machine. I can click on that invoice, see a copy of that invoice, and send them a copy without leaving Outlook. So automating some of those tasks that may happen often. In this case, you can see it running on a tablet. You can see it running on a laptop, whether it's a Surface Microsoft laptop, whether it's an Apple or even a Google Chrome. You've got that capability to do that. And then you can see the different mobile formats with the Microsoft phone sitting in the middle there still. So it does support that, specifically because it's a browser application. So it doesn't necessarily need software loaded on your device to be able to access it. The security is all around multi-factor and login, but you don't need necessarily to have anything to be able to print, etc., from the system. So I might go forward. Intelligence, so it's showing you as I'm doing the quoting process in Outlook, it's actually suggesting the lines. So somebody's asked for some chairs, etc. It suggests the lines. It's showing you that it can do a sales forecast. It's showing you that as I do a sales order, I get information on the right side about availability of the product, and I can forecast on this particular line. And it's also giving me notifications as I'm doing it, because I may actually want to use something that I've already done before. And it's showing you how you can basically explode a bill of materials or a kit. And then finally, we're into a dashboard where it's giving insights. So there's a couple of items on this dashboard about sales. And in this case, this dashboard for this particular use is they're using Dynamics 365 Sales and they're using Business Central. So they're using the Sales CRM product with Business Central. And this dashboard is giving me a view of data from both. So I don't have to go log into each system to get that data. I get one dashboard telling me about my opportunities, my demands, and what the opportunity status is. Might go forward again. So the adaptable side, we've talked about this before. So we do have some customers that need to run on-premise still because they don't have that internet connectivity. So we do have an on-premise option. That on-premise option can actually talk to the cloud solution or the software as a service solution. And you can actually still use software as a solution for reporting and some of the other things the product does. So we do cater for both areas. We have the business management application, which has got a full functionality of core feature, including localization for Australian regulatory requirements and New Zealand regulatory requirements. And then we have this adaptable service. So we have vertical solutions that some of our partners have built. We have what's called tenant-specific extensions. So that's when something's built for you as a customer and it's only on your tenant. And then there's other ways to extend the solution through what we call Power Automate, used to be called Microsoft Flow, Power BI, and Power Apps. So you've got that adaptability. So you're buying a system that I don't necessarily have to go and buy a new app from to do something. I could go buy an app that gets embedded in the solution like it's part of the app, or I could go and buy a connected app, but that's not my only avenues to be able to extend the solution.
Yeah, thanks, Tim, for that. That was a really great overview of the Microsoft stack and Business Central and where it fits into that group of technologies. My name's Steve Evans. I'm one of the consultants at SOCO, focusing on Business Central. I've been, along with Tim and Priscilla, in this space for quite some time and have seen the evolution of this product over many years into what it is now. And there's a consistent theme that's coming through, which is connected apps. It's really, really important that we understand that Business Central as an ERP, what we would think about as an ERP, sits within a connected ecosystem. So you've got a lot more options than perhaps you used to have in solving particular problems that your business might have. So what I'm going to talk about is some customer stories to make all of that technology talk real and how it's actually solved real business problems, and also to define some outcomes that have been realised through using this technology. So where's my control? There it is. Okay, so we can see that these technologies working together can produce real outcomes, and these are reported outcomes from various customers from around the world. There's two that I'd really like you to focus on. One is that reduction in decision-making time from days to minutes, and that can only really come about by putting information where the people are. that need to make those decisions, and putting that information in a way that those people can make decisions, drawing information from different sources. Traditionally, that's send it out to Excel, trawl through it, produce some sort of report, and that may well take days to put together, particularly end-of-month financial reporting. In many cases, a lot of that can be done on demand as needed through the role center inside of Business Central. And another one that's really, really important is reducing workloads through automation. Again, any repetitive tasks, communicating within the system, for example, using workflows so that we don't have to externalize data to get approval for something, to automatically release a document, for that type of thing. And also connecting to other systems to trigger events is another key focus that we often see in the implementation space for Business Central. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. This one here is a company called Pack and Fresh, who are a contract food packaging business. And they're a really good case in point where the common pain point of having disparate systems, in this case, QuickBooks and Excel, were barriers to growth. And the difficulty of having those different systems really translates into duplication of effort. Okay, you sending information a lot, irrespective of and outside of security concerns of that information, you're essentially having to enter information twice, send it out to Excel, for example, make a decision, put it back into QuickBooks, into a different part of the system. That translates into barriers for growth. It means it's harder for the business to scale. It means that they usually have to throw people at the problem as the business grows. And so a key component of this particular project, and again, using Microsoft technologies, was using Azure AI machine learning and Power BI to deduplicate a lot of the data for migration. So that's a pre-implementation task, but it's an area where Microsoft technologies can assist as well. But implementing Business Central has enabled the business to make what we would call data-driven decisions, okay, and those decisions in a fraction of the time that was taken previously. And of course, we've got a happy CEO there, so it's important to understand that. And as Tim mentioned at the start, why upgrade? Why change your system? There's any change can be problematic and difficult. You need to have a good reason for doing it. Pack and Fresh had a great reason to do it. They couldn't grow without being able to get onto a platform. Then the decision is what system is going to support their needs to solve that problem specifically. Here's another one with a slightly different problem. Unga, who's a leading producer of cleaning products. Okay, their issue was they had got themselves onto an ERP that was out of date and not being maintained. And any of you who are operating manufacturing businesses on old software can easily find yourself into a position where you can't upgrade, or you would like to upgrade using that software, but it's a very prohibitive task because of customizations or the way the system's been, or you've got a lot of legacy data, that type of thing. The key for these guys was by adopting Business Central and the fact that it's always kept up to date and it always adds compliance updates on a regular basis using the SaaS model. That translates into predictable ERP costs going forward because it's software as a service, user count, and the updates are included as opposed to every 3 years going through this huge upgrade process. And also from a functional standpoint, having a modern ERP means that they can integrate with handheld devices for things like inventory operations. And they've also, in this particular case, streamlined their invoice process as well and automated a lot of that. So they've yielded some operating efficiencies, particularly through inventory control. And that's a really, really good thing for them. Now what I'd like to do is to bring that into some work that I've been personally involved in. Okay, so this particular case here is a printed circuit board designer and manufacturer in Australia, and they manufacture locally, design locally, which is a key part of their business, and they source globally. And they're in an extremely competitive market for electronic components, and certainly just post-COVID was very, very difficult for them. Their operation is comprised mainly of robotic soldering and PCB, soldering baths and component assembly. And they also have a very advanced QA test bench where every single PCB gets fully tested before it's assigned a serial number and released to market. They didn't want to change any of that in their particular project, particularly their QA process, because that fed into their ISO accreditation for design and everything else. So that was a fixed thing that we had to deal with. Operationally, state of the art, internally, their systems were not. They were really, really struggling because the system they were using just did not provide inventory control, didn't provide cost visibility of the operation. And realistically, what that translated into was delays in recording of inventory transactions, which led to delays in invoicing customers, and obviously additional administration time, duplication of effort from manual paperwork and information going from the factory floor back into an office and being entered into some system. So what we did with these guys was using Business Central. We essentially did two main integrations. One was to their QA system, to say, okay, when you build a circuit board, send us the serial number and what it is, and when you did it, and we will realise that inventory inside of Business Central. We'll create that as a part, we'll create its inventory, we'll consume all its components in the bill of materials instantly, so that no one actually has to create a separate serial number. And that was a relatively simple integration with that system. And immediately, of course, that solves the invoicing problem, because we now have real-time inventory. As soon as that PCB passes through that test bench and it gives it a green light, its serial number gets sent to us and we raise it, along with all the componentry being consumed. So that delivered inventory cost also, because we were accurately recording componentry. The other thing that we did with that is we integrated with their design software. Another big pain point with this customer was the designers, because they're in a very competitive market for components, they often need to seek alternative components to solve the same problem. Might be a silicon chip or a resistor or something like that. In order to realise a design and to program that design into their robotic machines, they have to go through their CAD process. So they'd have to actually put that component onto a PCB footprint, and that process, every time they wanted to raise a new part number, would take a couple of hours to get that part number raised in their design system. What we were able to do with BC at that time was to, as soon as they create a part number and give it its footprint using item attributes, that was sent to their design system, and immediately the designer could pick up that part number and plot it and pop it onto a circuit board in their design software. So it just eliminated all that time wasting, and that saved hundreds of hours of design time per year. And among other things that we did with this customer as well, we had a unique stock take process that was unique to their process. As Tim said, every business you ever consult to is different. They always have unique needs and unique problems that you need to have a look at solving to get the maximum benefit. Most processes are simple, such as procure to cash cycles and those sort of things, and the finance processes are usually fairly standard. But particularly when it comes to operations and manufacturing, every factory I've ever been to has got a different footprint. It's all got a specific way that machines are orientated, and you have to consider that when you're doing your implementation. These guys also use Power BI to integrate that QA systems data to the Business Central data for reporting as well. And on a slightly different tack, I've also done work with primary production, and these guys were, you'd consider probably in Australia, medium-sized primary producer, but they had multiple orchards. This is a classic case where the business had outgrown its homemade Microsoft Access database. The business has been in operation since the 1940s. And that application, which was the hub of everything, was really an anchor, weighing that business down to prevent it from growing and moving forward. Over the years, they'd added many different systems to solve specific problems, only to create more problems because of the lack of interoperability or integration between all these systems. So the key problem here was to find a system that could integrate everything and to help them run their factory more efficiently. By putting BC in, we were able to centralise all their finance, inventory and costing, including their harvest process, their production process, which involved, robotic, grading, bin tipping onto flumes, out to production cases, onto conveyors, to palletizers, into distribution and cool stores. And also with sales with full traceability. So they were able to, using lot numbering in this case, track and trace all the way from, the harvest bin that appeared on the farm, all the way out to a sales that was made to one of the supermarkets. One of the other aspects of this particular project was printer integration as well. Their biggest pain point actually was labelling. So what we did here was integrate with labels in a particular way using peel and present. So the label sensor would sense that a label had been taken, and it would then print the next label. And that really reduced rework, because each lane was having lots and lots of printed labels pre-printed, and they didn't know how many cases they were going to do, because produce, when you grade it, you don't know what you're going to get in terms of yield. So this was a case of, well, you didn't have to worry about that, because if you needed a label, you pull it off and print it. And if the production scheduler decides to put something else down your lane, they would send a command to the printer to stop printing that label and switch it to a different label. In terms of other Microsoft technologies, and again, this is really about, yes, Business Central can service most of your needs within its own ERP space, but there are also tools that do a great job, such as Power BI. These guys use Power BI extensively for all of their reporting. We also used Power Apps to deliver real-time information through TV screens within the factory about what was being processed, what was coming up next, what was being processed on which lane, all of that sort of information. They also use Power Apps as well for orchard operations, such as registering, pre-harvest QA, samples and that type of thing as well. So they were really starting to use the sort of Microsoft ecosystem in this case, along with Office for sending emails and receiving orders and everything else, and integrations. So this was really a case of where the tech stack of Microsoft absolutely revolutionized how this business runs, all starting with the idea that, yes, that's what their strategy was, and B, providing the right technology to enable them to do it. Now, I'd like to hand over to Priscilla, who's going to outline our approach to ERP.
So thanks, Steve. Those were some really great examples of, I guess, how Business Central works with the Microsoft stack, and how it's just brought real value to clients. So just to reintroduce myself, my name's Priscilla Liu. I'm the practice manager for Business Central over here at SOCO, and I'm here to talk about the 4D methodology that we use for our engagements here at SOCO. So this is a framework that we've been using since 2013, and it's proven to ensure that we've got project outcomes that align with goals of clients. So it's effectively trying to de-risk these projects, which can be quite complex, because ERPs are, well, because of the nature of the ERP. Essentially, what we do over here is that we work through 4 phases with clients to ensure that not only do we deliver a solution that meets those identifiable, immediate, and future needs of the business, but that the solution continues to deliver value as conditions change and the business evolves. So the first phase is the discover phase, where we work with the business to gain an understanding of your current state, as well as your future wants and needs for the solution. So once that discovery concludes, we move on to the design phase, where we take the requirements that we've identified and we put together a solution design. In that solution design, we identify the systems, modules, and features that are needed to deliver a successful implementation. The solution design is presented to and reviewed by the business, and once we've got agreement on the design, we move into the deliver phase. So during delivery, the solution's built out, users are trained on the use of the system, and then we've got user acceptance testing to make sure that what we've actually built meets those requirements and are as per that agreed design. Delivery then concludes once we have a go live of the production system, and at that point we shift into the drive phase. The drive phase will typically comprise of BAU support, but can also include the adoption of new or existing features, So things that you might not have used before, and maybe your business has changed. So it suddenly makes sense for you to actually leverage that capability. Or else you may also have like further system enhancements. So it's effectively looking to drive that continual value for the business. Now, I am mindful that we are running over time. So what we might do is we'll skip the recap that we were planning to have of what we've gone through, and I'll hand over to Grace, who's subbing in for Sophie.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. Thank you, team. Thank you, Steve, as well, and Sophie. So unfortunately, Sophie has to dash. Therefore, I'm joining in now, and we're just going to open the webinar for Q&A. I know there's a lot of information to absorb. We run over time, so if there's any question, please add on to your chat. I'm just going to give 1 minute. If anyone has any question, feel free to ask it. Just type it on the chat now. Oh, Sophie, you're back.
I am, because I jumped off. My
You're in
apologies. I
mute.
jumped
You're
off
on
to go to
mute.
the other meeting, and then they cancelled it. Thank you very much. So I'm back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. So we have David who just asked a question. How would a professional services business use this system?
All right. So for
I think you're on mute, Priscilla. We do all the
technology, it's having too many windows open and not the right one showing what I need. Right. So in a professional services setting, usually what we look at doing is we would look at leveraging the jobs module or the project module. So within that, you can basically set up any projects that you may have on the go at your firm. With that, you can hook in capabilities like timesheeting out of Business Central because professional services, first thing you think of is time recording frequently. So you can have people you can capture timesheets in Business Central, have that push across into your jobs or project costing module, and that then will flow into things like your invoicing, your accounts, receivables, billables, etc. So within that suite of capabilities, you'll be able to record things like, you can record breakdowns of your projects, so by task or deliverables, and you record your budgets versus actuals. And so it absolutely can work in a professional services setting and is actually used by quite a lot of BC partners actually deploy BC themselves.
Priscilla, just a quick question from me, having spent 20 odd years in the accounting and finance sector myself. Those jobs, so normally that would be like if I'm doing a tax return or I'm doing, some sort of work for that client, I can set that up as a job and attach the time billing to that.
Absolutely.
Is that right? Yeah.
Correct.
Thanks.
Sorry, I've just switched on. Can I? The financial system is basically a system that can be used by any sort of company, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just a bit more advanced than MyOB or the other one.
Zero. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So having worked for MYOB, David, I can tell you that most of the business products that MYOB have developed are quite limited when it actually comes to more complex operational requirements, regardless of the industry. So the Business Central sort of is that next notch up. So the equivalent would be going to, a larger enterprise system once you've outgrown MYOB.
Yeah, I actually, for a client over 6 months, implemented MyOb Advanced,
Yep.
which it's complicated, but it's pretty comprehensive. I mean,
Yeah.
But it's certainly not a SaaS function, though.
No, and my MYB Advanced was designed to replace Accountants Enterprise and Accountants Office Practice Management System. So it's very limited to that type of functionality, and it doesn't really integrate all that well if you're going beyond just accounting, financial reporting.
It did the manufacturing side or the sales side the stock control side pretty effectively. I mean, that's one of the most complex things as in any company, especially manufacturing. I've had 25 years of manufacturing experience as well. So in all sorts of companies, and it can be pretty horrendous if you don't get it right.
Exactly. And you need to have that flexibility to have a system that's actually going to complement the way your business is set up as well. And that's what SOCO does. They actually work with customers to ensure that the way that the ERP system is set up, it actually helps streamline and ensures that you've got integration across all systems, not just a system over here. So you've got a single view over what's going on under the bonnet.
Yeah. I think SaaS is revolutionizing these things, to be honest.
And so is AI, robotic process automation.
One of the biggest nightmare of any complex system is if you make on the side additional functionality that isn't transferable from one model of the master system to another, and and the fact that SaaS actually, from certainly Microsoft SaaS, they actually maintain the thing dynamically, so there's no question of I'm 10 versions out of date.
Gone are those days, thank God.
Well, it's huge, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
You could never keep up with it in a large company, Frank. No, it's very hard.
Yeah, so David, I think one of the things that for me, that because again, one of these case studies was actually transferring from an MYB product. One of the key things was inventory cost resolution. So the ability to actually hone in and go down to a single day or a single transaction and understand what its costs, how the costs came to be, and when those costs came to be. Business Central is a as-at perpetual inventory system with really no month-end roll-up, kick everybody out of the system process to do your end of financial accounts. As you record a transaction, that transaction's integrated, it hits the GL. You can see it actually happening in the GL as it happens. And one of its key strengths is I can be in that general ledger setting if I'm an accountant, for example, and I can go all the way down to my operations document that actually caused that transaction to be, so I can see what happened. So I don't actually go and have to talk to my production manager to say what happened with production order 1, 2, 3. I can navigate to it if I want to. Similarly, if I'm an operations person and I have access to the GL, I can look at that document and see where all those transactions flowed and what everything cost. And also, supporting different types of cost methods, whether it be, average costing or standard costing, is also a key component, and also having serialized costing. So if I'm making large capital equipment, for example, I can issue a serial number and know the exact cost of what it cost me to build that particular piece of capital equipment, because I have all the costs, grouped into its serial number.
So what you're saying there is it's got quite a robust audit trail.
Oh yeah, very, very much so. It's always been, even in the old days, it always was very, very strong in terms of its approach to how transactions recording and also audit trails and relating transactions together was. And now it's in the cloud and in the SaaS model, and there's more capacity. There's more functionality around that.
It's strange, because I worked on NetSuite and MyOb and a few other SAP, and SAP's a different ballgame, but another level. But I wasn't even aware of the Microsoft one until I recently had a client that used it, and I didn't even know it existed. So I'm not sure that. Is that just me, or is it? I've used Outlook for the last 20 years. So
I think I could probably answer that. I think because NetSuite, well, Oracle's NetSuite has had such a strong presence in Australia for so long, and just the nature of our Australian market, you know, and you know, knowing accountants the way I do, you know, we're very married to the systems that we're very comfortable with. Business Central had a bit of an evolutionary journey before it became what it is now. And I think it's entering the market, and the awareness around it is growing because it's now such a fantastic, functional, it's very flexible in pricing as well. So you don't get that with NetSuite. You know, and Tim's here, he can sort of talk about this a little bit more too, but you know, NetSuite's very fixed around the type of pricing it gives you, but there's a lot more flexibility that Business Central offers you, and it is growing much more in Australia. It's just where it's taken us a little bit longer to actually recognise what a great product it is.
Yeah, and it's kind of just to add to that question, I mean, I think it's okay. Business Central currently is at 111% year-on-year growth. So it's
in Australia or worldwide, are we talking?
This is about Australia. Worldwide, it's similar figures. So if we look at traditionally, NAV, Dynamics NAV, I think got up to about 90,000 customers in its lifetime, and I think we had about 300,000 odd across that product, Dynamics GP, and a few other things. The Business Central is well on the way to that sort of number and growing.
Well, I'm just looking at the time now, folks.
Yeah, I've got to go as well. Yeah.
No, that's okay. We'll just wrap it up there. No, that's quite all right. Priscilla, can you pop over to the next slide? So, look, thank you everybody for joining us today. There will be a follow-up email. So if you need, if you've got any more questions, please reach out to the guys at SOCO. Look out for that email in your inbox. They would love to have a chat with you. And before we say goodbye, Priscilla, shall we jump to the next slide? Yep. So if you are Melbourne-based, or if you know of anyone who's in Melbourne, please let them know about the fantastic upcoming Melbourne event for manufacturers. That's an in-person event. It will cover pretty much what we've covered today with a lot more, but you also get to be able to network and have a few drinks and that sort of thing. So again, if you're interested, just let us know in the chat box that you are interested, and the guys from SOCO will send you the link to for you to register to that. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you once again. I really appreciate it. I hope you got a lot out of it. I know there is a lot to take on board. It is a big area, but as I said, well, I haven't said this before, but I have been in the, you know, the tech sector for over 22 years with a background in food manufacturing. And I think this is probably one of the best ERP systems that I've come across, which is why I'm more than happy to, you know, to promote it. Have a great afternoon, everybody, and take very good care of yourselves. Bye for now.